Hello, my name is Catherine Zitlosen, and I'm going to talk about the USCyberCrime conference today and then give a demo on Autopsy3. So what is the USCyberCrime conference? It's a conference for mainly forensics and law enforcement and information assurance. They had a little bit of malware analysis and some other random topics. The thing about it is that the audience was for professionals only, so I'm not sure that we're going to send Nest again. They don't really like students to go, and the purpose of this was for students to go. I was only able to get in because I work at the university and I leveraged it from that point of view. So my favorite topics from this conference were iPhone and iPad forensics. Even though I'm not really an iPhone person, I actually learned a lot from this talk because there's some different things that are required. Additionally, the forensic pitfalls of BYOD. BYOD stands for bring your own device, and that's very important as technologies move toward the mobile devices. And then Autopsy3, which I will go over in more detail. So iPhone and iPad forensics. The main tools that you use, they require their own tools. The widely used tools are from a company called Black Bag. So the main analysis tool where you perform the forensic analysis is called Blacklight. But before you can do that, you need to get a tool called Macquisition, which gets the image of whatever device you're trying to get, and then you load that image into Blacklight to do the analysis. But before you can image, you'll want to use software called SoftBlock. It's a software-based write blocker. That way you can ensure that the data is forensically sound and that there were no changes made in the process of imaging. A software write block is not as good as hardware, but it is considered forensically sound. Some things that I learned in this talk. So when you get a forensic analysis of a Mac device, there's different considerations. First of all, they have a system and a data partition, so you need to make sure that both are analyzed. It's also a different file system. It's an HFS plus file system. The only thing that you really need to keep in mind with that is that it's case sensitive. Some potential issues that don't come up, that may not come up on other devices, is that there's a feature called Find My Phone, which allows the user to do a remote wipe. This is very critical because all of your data can be lost. So what you need to do is you need to shut the phone off immediately, remove the SIM card, and put it into a Faraday bag. It should never touch the network. If it even gets on the network for a split second, all of the data can be lost. Additionally, there's file encryption on the 3GS and later, AES 256-bit. This is important because each file has an individual encryption key, so you better hope that the encryption is not turned on. And if it is turned on, you have to try and brute force or try and somehow decrypt each file individually. So this can become very, very, very difficult for doing digital forensics. Some alternative sources to getting the data is that most of these phones sync to iCloud and mail accounts. So depending on what they're doing, you can probably try and get information from iCloud or whatever mail server they're using. Additionally, backups can exist on both Mac or PC. They can exist on multiple computers, and multiple devices can be synced to a computer. So that's something you want to make sure that you are getting the correct information from the correct device. But the data should be unencrypted on the Mac or PC. So BYOD procedures, again, bring your own device. So some of the standard procedures if you want to implement BYOD in your company is that you should identify the devices and the potential risks. You should create an audit plan, which I'll get into in a little bit. You want to capture and review the data doing digital forensics and have a long-term plan for the data integrity and security of the organization. Some of the risks are that devices are constantly changing. It can be hard to keep up with different specifications when devices are always changing. But as things change, you need to change your plan. Also, data is always changing location. Some of it can be stored on the cloud. And then there's the issue of who owns the data. like, is it the user? How are you going to, is it the company? And how are you going to access the data? Do you have permission to go onto whatever cloud server and view this data? You need to like kind of monitor what's on the phone, because you need to know if your secure company data is on this phone and it needs to be protected. Another risk is that people can make bad choices. People can install malicious software. They can leave their phone unlocked. They can let someone else use their phone. And this all needs to be considered when making the decision of what data should be put on a phone, what phones are allowed, and what the policies and procedures are. So some of the issues, again, like I mentioned, who owns the data in the cloud? Does the company own it? Does the user own it? That's something that needs to be defined before you implement a BYOD policy. Also, keep in mind that multiple devices can use the same cloud. So when you're getting this data from the cloud, you may own the data that's from a particular phone, but do you own all the data in the cloud? So that's really, all of this stuff needs to be defined and considered ahead of time. There can also be multiple users on the phone. This is both important for, again, who owns what data, and also, do you want to restrict that other users can use the phone because they may get into some sort of company resource that you don't want them to. Some issues can also be spyware and app permissions. This really needs to be investigated. There needs to be some procedures on which apps are allowed. Maybe you don't allow certain apps like Facebook. I mean, there should be a clear set of guidelines for what is and is not allowed. Additionally, it's important to note that what is good for forensics is bad for security. So if you want to make it to where you can monitor your employee by using digital forensics, chances are the data is not very secure. If you want to really secure the data, it can be hard to monitor. So you got to find that fine line for your company. What's important, what's not. It's different for everyone, it's different for every device, and then it constantly changes. Some of the mitigation tactics of these problems are frequency of audits. You can do more and more audits depending on what your company decides. You can do it after traveling, after the employee travels, after OS updates, because that always makes some changes. Whatever you decide, you could do it once a week, once a month, whatever your resources allow. If you only have one person managing 200 devices, chances are they're not going to be able to do a forensic investigation every week. Again, you also need to establish a baseline for accepted apps and change this baseline as devices and apps change. And then you need to define who the device belongs to so that you don't have any limits or you have the appropriate limits set when it comes to monitoring your data and resources. And you might consider live monitoring. There's a lot of tools out there that can monitor what the user is doing. So Autopsy3, I'm going to get into that now. It's Windows-based, where the previous ones, they didn't really run on Windows. It also includes third-party modules. That's one of their main advertising features, is that if it doesn't have a current feature, you can install a third-party module. Also, Autopsy3 is great because it's free and open source. It has most of the same functionality of commonly used programs, such as Encase and FTK, without the high cost of it. So some of the main features that they advertise is that it performs hash calculation. This works on each individual file, which is what you need for the results to hold up in a court of law. It can do web activity analysis, keyword searching, that's pretty standard. It can open zip archives, which I know a lot of forensic programs don't natively do. It can extract EXIF data, that's information in a photo that tells you when it was taken, what camera it was taken with, etc. It can view .pst and mbox email analysis, that's like Outlook. It can view all those files that were stored locally. It can look at recent user activity. And one of the main things that Autopsy3 advertises is that there are 2 law enforcement modules. This really helps law enforcement. So that was kind of their tailoring point when they did this. So now I'm going to go over Autopsy3 with you. Alright, so I have Autopsy preloaded onto my computer. You can just download and install it using the link in my presentation, which is loaded on the website. But this is just it's starting up. I'm just going to go through it with you as if it were already installed. Okay, so it'll give you this dialog to create a new case. So you'll set a case name, such as test case. You wouldn't name it that, you'd have some naming convention. And the base directory I've already preset, but you can just put that wherever you want. So we'll go through and click next. I'll give it a case number and your initials. You'd actually put your name, I'm just using my initials. And you go through, it just sets up all the details. So I'm going to add an image file. I already have an image file, but these are the options, logical or local disk. I'm going to add this DD file that I pre-made, but it'll load EO1 files, it'll load .img, whatever image file you already have in case, Autopsy3 is able to view that. You would also set a time zone, so it automatically put the correct time zone. So it keeps the settings from the last time that you ran Autopsy3. So these are the ingest modules. This is everything that you want to investigate in your forensic analysis. So I've selected recent activity, hash lookup, all of these things. I took off the EO1 verifier because I have a DD image, and it's just going to take up more time, and it's not necessary. And same with Android Analyzer. This is an image of a thumb drive that none of the information came from an Android operating system, so it's not really relevant to my case, and it ends up taking longer to process. I'm also not going to process unallocated space because that takes significantly longer, and for the purpose of this demo, I don't think the time constraint is appropriate. So it actually opened it on my other screen. Here is Autopsy3. So right here you can see it's loading. It's pretty quick, but it's also a small image. Let me get this fully on the screen. Okay, so you want to wait till it's done. Everything's done on here. So I'm just going to go through where everything is on Autopsy3, because I'm not going through like an actual case. So right here, this is the image you loaded in. You can click on it. You can view all the files on it. You can also view the file structure just by digging into it. If you click a particular file here, it'll give you, first of all, if it's an image, it'll give you a view down here under media. It'll give you the times, all the relevant times, size, permissions. Down here it'll give you the MD5 hash, which is very important to hold up in a court of law. It also gives you an object ID, which I like. That's something that FTK does, but Encase does not. So if you refer to a specific file, you can refer to this file as object ID 163. It will always be 163. If I were to come down here and sort by create time, this highlighted file is still object 163. I can even sort by object ID. I'm not really sure how that would be too relevant, but no matter what you do, that stays the same. So that's pretty nice when you reference files. Oh, it also gives you the file size right here. I should have mentioned that. So the favorite thing about Autopsy3 are these views. So you can view different file types. Probably the best one is the images. So it'll give you a list of all the images with all the relevant data, hashes, file size, all of that. But if you come here to thumbnails, you can view, you can adjust this here. You can view all of the pictures very quickly. It doesn't even take time to load. It's just all right there. And then you can click on the images and they display within the viewer. And they display rather quickly. You can also view them in an external viewer, the built-in one on Windows, but there's really no reason to do that. So also, Autopsy3 will natively play videos within the program, which is not something that all forensic programs can do, and it even includes sound. So I'm clicking on this video. This is the play button. I know it doesn't look like it, but it's giving you the video, and you can skip through the video.
Let me get this straight. You're
So you pause it and you skip through.
virtualizing your data center to make your life easier, save cost, and get more
Yeah, there we go.
your infrastructure.
No, it's supposed to skip through, but apparently that is a flaw of Autopsy3. So if there were audio files, it would show it right here. And archives. So it'll natively show you everything in the zip file, which is not something that all forensic programs can do. If you double click on it, it doesn't work. But you can view the file and directory, which will pull it up here, and then you can double click on it here. And this is everything in the zip file. And it's just pictures. But you can just kind of go through that. Where were we? We're on documents. So it gives you different documents. One of the things that I do and don't like about Autopsy3, what I do like is that it'll give you all of the text internally. It strips out all the formatting, and sometimes that can be kind of nice. And it'll give you this metadata. But at the same time, this document, it looks like it's just text, but you don't have any of the formatting, and it also has images in it. So I viewed it in an external viewer. If you scroll down, there's images that it has stripped out that you don't know about. So it's probably a good idea to view this type of thing in an external viewer. And same with PDFs. So you would open in an external viewer. Sorry, it's going on my other screen. And then you can view all the formatting and images. But if you just want the down and dirty text, you would view it on here. And a lot of this isn't in English, but it gives you everything. You can also view metadata. This results to give some information, any strings, and you can view the hex on all files within Autopsy. Plain text, there's not really any formatting to be had here, so this just strips out the text for you to view. Executables, this image didn't have any, but they would be sorted here. Recent files, that was one of the features I mentioned. Everything was put onto this thumb drive on the same day because I made it myself, but it would basically, it's giving me everything, but it would strip it out by day. Deleted files, same thing. I had a previous image on this thumb drive, so all it's doing is giving the previous image. It did find it. I didn't search for unallocated space, so you're not going to get any of that. It also shows you EXIF metadata. So there's only 3 images on this thumb drive that have EXIF metadata, but it puts them all together. It tells me it was taken with a FinePix S5200, which is made by Fujifilm, and the date it was created. And then you can also just view these images internally. You can even set the size of your thumbnails if that helps you at all. I want to talk about keyword hits now. So let's do a few keyword searches. I know this exists just because I know the case, but you might have predefined keywords you're looking for. I'm also going to search for the word nest. So let's do a search. Also, it's an exact match, but it's not case sensitive. So here, it gives me a list of all the VM hits. And so let me show you here the difference. So with nest, there's nothing in the title that says nest. But when I click on it, it highlights where it found it. And there's only one match. It says matches on page 1 of 1. This file, for example, it doesn't have any keyword hits. It's pulling the word nest from the title. So if there's multiple keyword hits, let's see if I can find one. Most of these are coming from the title. Well, I'm not finding one, but right here, it'll tell you like 1 of 40 or whatever, and you can click these arrows to go through all of the matches, and they'll all be highlighted so you can see everywhere where it has an instance of the word VM. And you can close out these tabs up here, come down here to keyword hits, and you can pull these searches back up later on. I haven't done anything with that. There's no email messages on here, or they would be listed here. Tags. Also interesting items. That's just another way of tagging things. So if I come in here and say this document was of importance, I would right click it, tag it, quick tag. I just want to do a quick tag and bookmark it. And I want to tag some images. Okay, so you can quickly refer back to these bookmarks just by clicking here. And file tags, and they're all in a list, and you can view thumbnails of ones that actually have thumbnails. So you've gone through, you've done your investigation, you've done your keyword search, now you want to make a report. There's this nice button here, Generate Report, and it gives you different options. I recommend HTML because it's the most visually friendly. So let's come through here. I want to do everything that was bookmarked. Alright, so it loaded it in a browser. It gives you the general case summary. And then here's everything I bookmarked. It gives me the information, like the file information, and then I can view the file. In this particular instance, it's going to view it externally. This one, it'll view it in the application, and it'll give me thumbnails. I don't think that they're the best reports compared to Ncase or FTK, but they are appropriate. They are sufficient. And the other thing I wanted to go over, if you go to Tools and you make this timeline, this is probably one of the best features I would say about Autopsy3. It does tend to load behind the window, which is something that they would hopefully correct someday. But you can go to, I'm not sure why that's there, but you can go to the year. So say something happened in 2013, August 2013. So I want to see all the files in August of 2013. You can click on specific dates, and it gives you all the files, and you can view them in here like you would normally in an autopsy. And then you can go on this and go to a different year. So this is everything in 2014. You can go to October. This is the day I made the image, which is why everything's on here. Or you can zoom out one at a time and go back to the beginning. So that's the timeline feature. I think Autopsy3 is a great tool to learn to use. It only took me about 10 minutes to actually figure out how to use it. It's pretty intuitive. I have never used the modules, but you would do tools plugins and get it that way. It's pretty self-explanatory, and they do have a lot of good sorting. I would recommend that you use my demo and then refer to my slides. They have some screenshots of different things you can do. So that's everything that I'm going to go over with Autopsy3 today.